Vienna. The 7th of May, 1824. A new symphony has just ended. The audience is on its feet, cheering, waving handkerchiefs so the composer might see what he cannot hear. Because the man standing at the front of that orchestra is completely deaf. He is still turning the pages of his score, unaware the music has stopped. A young singer walks over, takes him gently by the sleeve, and turns him around to face the hall. Only then does he see it. 5 standing ovations. His name was Ludwig van Beethoven, and this is his story. He was born in Bonn, in Germany, in December 1770. His father, Johann, was a court singer and a difficult man. He had heard of a boy in Salzburg named Mozart, who had astonished Europe as a child, and he decided his own son would do the same. The lessons were long and often harsh. Ludwig was sometimes woken in the night to practice. He was made to perform in public before he was ready. He did not become the next Mozart. He became something else entirely. By his teens, he was the family's provider. His father's drinking had worsened, his mother had died, and Ludwig, barely 18, was raising his younger brothers. And still, he composed. In 1792, at 21, he left for Vienna, the music capital of Europe. He went to study with Joseph Haydn, the most respected composer alive. Vienna took to him immediately. Not for his manners, he had few, but for his playing. Beethoven at the piano was something people had never heard. He improvised with such force and imagination that listeners wept openly. Aristocrats competed to have him in their homes. For the first time in his life, he was free, admired, in demand, and paid. And then, quietly, something began to go wrong. He was in his late 20s when he first noticed it. A ringing in his ears. Conversations he had to strain to follow. Voices that seemed to come from further away than they should. A musician was going deaf. He hid it. For years, he avoided company rather than admit it. He stood closer to the orchestra. He pretended not to hear because he was distracted. In 1802, staying in a village called Heiligenstadt, he sat down and wrote a letter to his brothers. In it, he described what he had been hiding. He wrote about despair. He admitted he had thought about ending his life. And then he wrote the line that changed everything. He said that it was his art, and only his art, that held him back, because he could not bear to leave the world before he had produced all that he felt was within him. He never sent that letter. It was found among his papers after his death. But from that moment on, he wrote as though he had been given his life back. What followed is one of the most extraordinary periods in the history of music. The Fifth Symphony, with those 4 opening notes known everywhere on earth. The Emperor Concerto. The Moonlight Sonata. The Pastoral Symphony, in which you can hear a countryside he could barely hear at all. He was not writing in spite of his deafness. He was writing from inside it. As his hearing faded, he sawed the legs off his piano and placed it on the floor so he could feel the vibrations through the wood. He carried notebooks so visitors could write down what they wanted to say. His music grew stranger, deeper, and more daring, because he was no longer writing for a room. He was writing for something he could only hear in his mind. By 1824, he had been almost completely deaf for a decade. And he chose that moment to attempt something no one had done. He would end a symphony not with instruments alone, but with voices. A choir singing of joy, and of all people becoming brothers. The Ninth Symphony took him years. When it was finished, he was 53, in poor health, and had not heard a note of it except in his own head. At the premiere, he insisted on standing at the front, beside the conductor, to indicate the tempos. And when it ended, he did not turn around. He could not hear the roar behind him. It was the young alto Caroline Unger, 20 years old, who walked over and turned him to face the audience. The hall was on its feet. Beethoven died in Vienna on the 26th of March, 1827. He was 56. For 2 centuries, we did not really know why. In 2023, scientists sequenced his DNA from locks of his hair. They found a hepatitis B infection and a strong genetic risk of liver disease, the most likely cause. But they found something else too. Or rather, they didn't. Even with modern science, we still do not know what made him deaf. The one question he would most have wanted answered remains unanswered. Perhaps that is fitting. Because Beethoven's story was never really about what he lost. It was about what he did afterwards. He wrote the Ode to Joy, the most hopeful music ever composed, while living in total silence. Today, it is the anthem of Europe. It has been played at the fall of walls, at the end of wars, and in cities in mourning. A deaf man wrote the sound that humanity reaches for when it wants to say, "We are still here, and we are together." If you take one thing from his story, let it be this. He was not spared his difficulty. He simply refused to let it be the end of the sentence. Now, listen for yourself. This is the Moonlight Sonata. Beethoven wrote it in 1801, just as his hearing was beginning to fail. Thank you for spending this time with us. If this story was worth sharing, share it with someone younger. Subscribe to Dream Sounds Kids. The next story is Bach.